Now we're ready to go through our design journal. So this is what you'll use to document all of your learning and the process that we use to do our experiment. So let's get started. The objective. We need to break down the problem, and basically we were trying to make sure that we could create a boat that could handle the criteria and constraints. So we had a couple of things that we had to do do that, and that was for us to manage our subproblems. Remember, we used a small sink, which I used for a bowl, and I had marbles and a gallon of water and 2 pieces of aluminum foil. I decided that I was going to make my criteria be 15 marbles. And so when I did each experiment, I needed to know whether my boats could hold 15 marbles. Here's our criteria and constraints. We need each foil sheet must be hold the same size. The original sheets must be the same size. That way we have equal playing ground when we make our construction. Then after we construct our boat, it must hold the weight of the 15 marbles without sinking. So it can sink eventually, but it needs to hold the 15. And then we can see how many more we can add after it maxes out at the 15. All right, here's our questions. Defining the problem. The problem is we need to make sure that the boat doesn't sink and it can hold the 15 marbles. And you can use pennies or whatever that you have. So some of the possible solutions, if you're working with a team, you could think about that and talk about it, or with yourself. You may decide on how you want to do it and formulate that into your mind before you start folding your foil. That way you know exactly how you want to make your folds, so your folds will be nice and crisp and your boat will turn out in a manner that you find to be neat and organized. All right, planning out our strategy. You want to draw your sketch. That way you can get from what's in your mind on a piece of paper, and you can see how that will need to be. How you're going to imagine your prototype to be that you're going to actually do. Remember to consider that criteria and constraints so that you know how you want to fold it and how thick you want it to be. And while you're doing some sketches, maybe you do a couple so you have some alternatives to your design before you start making your folds. Now, here are 2 examples of this isometric sketches that I made. Remember, isometric sketch is going to be your 3D sketch. It's going to be where it's going to be almost exactly to the replica of what you think it will actually look like. You could do a thumbnail sketch, which is just a flat sketch that is just kind of a quick, rough drawing. But either way, you have an opportunity to see how it will actually be once you draw it out, and to what it will look like when you'll make it. Next, make your model. Here's pictures of the models that I made, the ones that I used for my experiment. I considered my criteria and constraints when I built both of them, and I decided on my designs based on the drawings that I did. So I have boat 1 and boat 2. Now we tested the prototype. We took those foil boats and we put them in the water, and we got to see if they could hold the 15 pennies or the 15 marbles. So whichever you use. Then I will take some time to see how many more it will hold and see how my design is functioning before it starts to sink. So now it's time to analyze our results. So when we look at our chart, we can see that when we did the prototypes of those 2 boats, boat 1 could hold 25 marbles. So did it meet the criteria and constraints? Absolutely, because all it had to hold was 15. At the 25 mark, it started to sink, but we had already achieved our goal. For boat 2, we could see that it held 19 marbles. Did it withstand our criteria and constraints? Yes. It held 4 more extra before it started to sink. I just wanted to keep using more marbles so that I could see what the maximum would be, so I could make a comparison and determine how well our construction ended up. So let's take a reflection. What kind of changes would you make if you made a 3rd boat? Would you make it so that it withstands the constraints of 15, or would you increase it to be to closer to the maximum of our tested boat. So for instance, one of our boats held 25 marbles. Would you try to construct yours so that it could hold more? And the last thing I want you to think about is how you communicate your success or your unsuccessful design. So both of my boats sank, and that was okay. My it was a success because it met the criteria of the 15. Now let's look back at our objectives. Were we able to break down that problem into smaller steps? Yes. We thought about our problem, we made a sketch, we made a prototype. Then we did that process all over again with 2 trials to make sure that we fully developed our program process. So I think that we were successful in completing our objective for this task. You may tweet out your projects at 312 Mabian. That's me. I'd love to see all the designs and all the fun that you have creating this challenge, maybe with your family. Make sure you tag our school, KC Public Schools, and hashtag us at KCPS Homeroom. We love to see your designs and your projects during this design process. Have a great day.